Hey, and welcome back to another episode of Unsecurity Podcast. I'm host Brad Nye and joined today by Megan. Megan, welcome back.
Thank you, Brad. Good to be here.
No pressure, it's just you today.
I know. Get to be official co-host now.
So we're going to change it up a little bit. You had a good idea. Oscar and I kind of had a running joke about the weather, but why don't you tell everyone your idea?
Okay, yeah, and I will thank one of my friends, colleagues, Abby, for this. I can't remember if I told her I was thinking about it, but she at least seconded my idea, which is that Brad and I are both hobbyists and almost always have something going on. And so chatting about our hobbies, the only challenge will be not having the whole entire podcast be just about our hobbies.
Yeah. So, what are you working on? Anything exciting?
So I unexpectedly recently got hooked on Magic the Gathering because they recently released a new. I don't know what I am very new to Magic, so I do not know the lingo. I am a noob. But they came out with a new set or whatever you want to call it called Bloomborough. And yeah, I'm just going to say that YouTube advertising or targeted marketing definitely works because one day my family is watching whatever on YouTube and this pops up with these cute little animated animals. And we're like, what is that? You have to click on that. And at the end, it's like
Funny.
Magic the Gathering. And I'm pretty sure my daughter and my own mouth just drops. And we're like, how do we not do that? and my first reaction was, okay, I'm going to resist. I'm going to be good. Next thing I know, she's convinced me to go to our local hobby games store that we just learned about due to my brother moving here and finding it. And sure enough, there's the starter pack, and she's like, let's get it, let's get it. And I'm like, okay.
That's funny.
And they have an app you can install where you can basically play all the Magic the Gathering that you want to against people. And yeah, that's pretty much been my nonstop go-to on my phone for the last like week and a half. So I'm still a very, very noob. I lose a lot more than I win, but it's been pretty fun, and I will almost certainly be buying more cards.
We're addicted.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, haven't had any crafts going on, like builds and puzzles or anything. Like, yeah, I got hooked on Elden Ring. Uh, I saw that they had the new, it was similar. They had new downloadable content, a new like expansion, and I was like, oh, how did I not? How have I not been playing this for the last 2 years? So I've been playing quite a bit of that and dying way too much. It is an unforgiving game,
Yeah.
but it
They,
keeps
they
me out of
they know how
trouble.
to market to us clearly.
Yeah.
I was gonna on a related but security topic. So I've been playing the game, and my daughter, of course, is very jealous that I have a phone that I can play the game on, and so she got me to install Magic the Gathering's arena on our computer so that she could play. But I was kind of curious to see what would happen if I registered her as, a not yet 13-year-old
Mm,
kid, and whether they would allow her to play. And they did, but they went through a service. Oh crap! I just had it on my screen. Called oh, this is why I closed all those windows and still can't find what I'm looking for. Oh, consent check. Have you ever seen that?
I haven't heard of that.
Consentcheck.com. Um, and I thought it was really cool because essentially it like said, okay, have your parent create an account and
Mm,
authorize you to play through this consentcheck.com because I mean you're a parent too, so you've probably seen a number of the different ways that softwares, applications, all these things allow you they either don't care that you're
right.
a kid that's playing and then they're not appropriately managing and identifying that they have, underage users, or they are and giving that parent kind of forcing them to say, yes, it's okay for my child. I'm consenting for my child. But yeah, I was thinking what we should read up a little bit more about this consent check organization because they help organizations manage consent and compliance kind of privacy information
Interesting.
regarding GDPR, CCPA, yeah, they do child privacy aspects of it. And I really like their FAQ because they kind of outline what they do and don't do. It's like, hey, no, we can't cover all of this for you. You still have to do the thing,
Oh,
but
right.
here's the one piece that we can help you with, which is primarily that tracking of the authorizations granted.
Well, and that goes back to the security where we talk about knowing the distributed models of who's responsible for what. It's exactly it. It's nice that they have that nicely laid out.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder if there's more organizations like that because I think even in my experience, like with organizations that were asking about GDPR when it was new, was like, how do we track all of this?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think this consent
This
check, and there's
helps.
probably a few other organizations, I think that's the piece that they're filling. So yeah,
Interesting.
pretty cool.
Very cool. Well, we've got a couple of articles we wanted to hit on that were really big. I'll go first. There's one that came out earlier this month. It's a couple weeks old now, but it's called Bitsloth, and it's exploiting the bits or background intelligent transfer service as a C2 mechanism, which is pretty scary if you think about it because it's a native Windows functionality that really is kind of needed. You break that, Windows is going to have problems. But yeah, they're proxying encrypted C2 traffic over HTTP and port forwarding utility. So kind of crazy that don't like that.
Yeah, that one sounds. I didn't get a chance to read about that one, but anything that's
Yeah,
native, it's going
it's
to be harder to detect because it's supposed to be there.
it's got key logging, screen capture capabilities, features for discovery, enumeration, and command line execution. Uh, what's interesting is it says in the article it's been in development since December of 2021. So this
Oh
is
wow.
taken several years, almost 2.5 years for it from when it was discovered to how long it took to build that out. That's kind of crazy that they're putting that much resources into it.
Right, you're right. Hopefully resources, not lack of resources, but because that, yeah, it sounds serious. Maybe they felt that it wasn't easy enough to discover to get on it faster. But
Yeah. So, and I know you had one you wanted to talk about.
yeah, there were a bunch. I think another one that you sent over that looked like it was new information, even as of today, was the zero click exploit
Yeah.
um, concerning, yeah, I don't know, did they give it a specific name? But urgent, or I guess they're just saying it's driving urgent patching of Windows TCP IP flaw. And some of the things that I noted was Microsoft themselves is immediately giving it a 9.8 severity rating because they are trying to emphasize that people get on this right away. It did get deployed as a patch as part of Patch Tuesday, so you don't have to go looking for it special. It is part of that package. You just want to make sure it's at the top of the things that you're deploying. Or alternatively, you can disable IPv6. So if you want that slower release cycle and you're confident that you're not using IPv6, which, like we said, most applications and organizations are not really using IPv6 yet, you might be able to safely do that if you don't want to deploy that patch. And I think the interesting thing was it just sounded if you knew what you were doing, essentially, if you knew how to craft those packets, the attack essentially looked like you're just sending repeat, specially crafted IPv6 packets to the system until eventually you break through and can potentially enable remote code execution.
Yeah. Yeah. And the scary part is that they're saying it's trivial to craft and requires no privileges or user interaction. So
Yeah,
patch. The
literally
other
just
thing is
gaining
Patch
time.
Tuesday this week or this month had 6 0 days
Mm-hmm.
patched in it. So yeah, again, what we talk about, they're get on it.
Yeah, yeah. It kind of links and is related to another of the articles that we were kind of chatting about beforehand, which was that Blackhat and DEF CON, I think they both kind of coincide at
Yeah.
the same time in the last week and a half. And one article we were looking at is 5 key takeaways from Blackhat, and one of them was pointing out that patching is not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Pointing out that there are ways to bypass patches, and so it's hard. And I know in our company, in our line of business, we talk about patching a lot because it is really important. But also don't think that as an organization or as an individual that you are going to have no other security issues if all you do is apply patches quickly.
Well,
Um,
and they just came out with Windows Down date
yeah, I've seen that too.
earlier this month, and it's like, well, guess what? You patched. Doesn't matter. They're gonna downgrade you, and everything's exploitable again.
Right, right. Yeah, I saw that one. It sounds like that was uh, responsibly released to Microsoft ahead
Yeah.
of Blackhat, but then a presentation from Safe Breach by Alon Lviv was demonstrating how, in some cases, you can, access those systems and then using Windows Update actually revert back some of
Yeah.
those patches. So just a new lovely.
It's crazy. So
Mhm.
I like. Let's talk a little bit more about these takeaways from Black Hat, because
Yeah,
that's there's always so much going on there with research and everything, and a lot of the articles are like, "Oh no, everything's gone fire. We're totally out of luck." And yeah,
yeah,
we're looking at CSO online, and of course we'll get all the links when we send out the announcement so that everybody could read up on it. But I thought this was good in that it. Excuse me. It does have some of the attacks that we were talking about, but it's not a negative article. It's more like, hey, here's here's what people are talking about.
yeah.
Um, so the first one, well, you mentioned already the patching piece. The
Mhm.
other one is under about cloud security. Um, in that one, you had researchers from Aqua Security, how they were uncovering security flaws in provisioning the AWS S3 buckets. So yeah, it's what we always talk about in with our cloud security. People go, "Oh, I'm in the cloud. I'm secure."
Mhm.
No,
Yeah,
you still have to actually secure your instance. The back end infrastructure, yeah, Amazon or Microsoft or Google, we're probably doing a pretty good job of, but your bucket is out there. You can't just assume and leave it at the default. So make sure you go out and know what you're doing. What do you have
right.
exposed?
Yeah, it comes down to like they talk about the cloud shared responsibility model. It's like, hey, guess what? They aren't taking full responsibility for the security of your instance or your interactions if you don't configure it properly, if you don't manage your users and credentials properly, then they can't protect you. Usually I see it in the context of, yeah, protect your credentials, but it definitely comes to properly configuring. Like you said, don't put your S3 bucket public or
Right.
just hidden. Make sure that it's actually secured and that you're using good level security and just monitoring. I think even like you said from that Black Hat demonstration, they were talking about. I don't know if I saw. Yeah, they kind of briefly went over kind of methods of essentially observing behavior through the automatic provisioning of S3 storage buckets. And essentially, if you have predictive behavior for how those things are happening, attackers, it sounded like, could essentially monitor and like intercept the creation of those buckets and result in anything from your whole account takeover to data breaches and again remote code execution. So it's kind of amazing what they can use, especially if your behavior is predictable in those
Yeah.
areas. So it's not even something like we have a cloud security configuration review, which I think a lot of organizations should do because a lot of them aren't securing their cloud instances as securely as they should or as aware of what those settings mean. I think a lot of it comes down to the knowledge of the person or the team that you have managing those systems. Because a lot of the time, especially if you're learning on the job, like many of us do, you're kind of reading it and interpreting it. You might not fully understand the
Right.
implications of the settings that you're making, or you might not know how to make the right decision.
Yeah,
Um,
and they're saying it, and I mean, we've seen it, and in the article, Symantec is quoted as saying, the attackers are abusing uh, the cloud services because it makes detection so much harder, right?
Hmm.
Are you going to block traffic to AWS? That's not realistic.
Right.
But that also means if they're using AWS for exfil or C2, what are you going to do? How do you find that? So you got to really know and understand what normal is.
Yeah. Well, and I think most of the time you still have to increase your subscription model to get all of that security logging, and those
Probably.
advanced security features, at least from what I've seen. It doesn't usually come with the most base level subscription. So it's a little unfortunate. I know conversations have been had plenty in the past about it'd be nice if a lot of these platforms offered that security be by default, but at the same time we can understand from the perspective of the Microsofts and all of the cloud service providers is it costs a lot more money for them to enable that logging because it takes up a lot of storage space, it takes up a lot of processing power to kind of give you that. So rather than increasing the base cost of all of their services, they allow you to essentially opt into those additional security
Yeah.
services. But it still feels broken.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
It's like, well,
Uh,
if they're not monitoring it for me, that's the part you should be paying for, is if they're monitoring it for you. But no,
yes.
just
Yeah,
to get access to
I
see.
know. It's the money grab.
Yeah.
The next one I think is CrowdStrike. Shocking. Not a surprise there. I really think that's probably been run into the ground. But again, the big thing out of it is what is your IRDR plan?
Hmm.
Because this was a mistake by CrowdStrike, but I mean it's not significantly different than what an attacker might do.
Right.
So it really does stress the need for having contingency plans in place and testing them, as
Hmm.
opposed to like, yeah, we've got one, and then this happens, and everybody's like running around with their hair on fire, not knowing what's going on. So some of the companies that I work with that are really on top of it were impacted and got fixed by Saturday.
Hmm.
They basically, yeah, they worked through the night, but they were able to get update and get fixed, and catch it fast enough that it wasn't as damaging as say like the for a Delta, where I
Right.
think what are they saying, like $500 million was lost or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. That's incredible. Yeah, and I think that that brief about those discussions mentioned resiliency, and I remember hearing that from conferences a little while ago too. Is just this focus on resiliency as well. Like, let's not. We need to focus more on how do you keep your organization resilient to any kind of interruption that you may encounter, whether it's a hacker or one of your third parties that are critical becoming unavailable, and understanding what condition you are going to be in if that service becomes unavailable, or if something happens where you have to take those systems online, and is it acceptable for certain operations to stop and for how long. And just knowing that makes it really empowers your organization, it empowers your executive team, because I think a lot of the time they're not aware, and IT might have some of that idea, but if they haven't communicated that to those executives, especially, then they can't get the resources and kind of the buy-in that they need to add some of those resiliency systems. So,
Yeah,
turning that conversation around and helping them understand what's the true business cost to
yeah,
not put in those.
yeah. This probably opened a lot of eyes for executives.
Hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
how many times have you heard it's not going to happen to us?
Uh,
We've got all these tools in place. Guess
yeah.
what? Surprise!
I have heard that, and my jaw drops every time when, especially a C level, is just like, no, that won't happen to us. Our people are perfect. It's like, no, they're not. I don't care how well you've trained them. They are not perfect every time. Bad things do happen to good
Right.
people
Well,
and educated
and
people.
that's the kind of the lesson is it doesn't have to be. It could be a mistake, right?
Hmm.
This was
Right.
tool that is really good at what it does, and they had a validation error, and whoops, and now
Yeah.
you're down.
One of one of the threats we assess as part of business impact analysis or a disaster recovery plan is it's just mistakes, human error.
Yeah,
Human error is always something, and especially if you're in an organization that has a lot of manual feedback or inputs, you know that human error is going to happen.
yeah. All right. Moving on. Next one, AI is a double-edged sword. Well, yeah, no kidding. We've known that. But it's called the AI as service providers. Uh, I like the novel attack techniques, including hugging face and replicate. I don't
Yeah,
understand the naming behind these, but
it's Blackhat.
have some fun with it. I'm good with that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, we've known that and seen that in the past, so it's just kind of more validation. Uh, you know,
Yeah, I think one part that stood out to me in that section was I didn't get a chance to look at the linked article, but they mentioned that NVIDIA did a presentation around practical findings around LLM security. And it sounds like it points to, I think, some more information about their presentation, but basically trying to give some practical guidance on what are some good defensive um, and blue team strategies for being aware, detecting, protecting your LLMs.
yeah, and I think the biggest thing that companies should take, or anybody listening should take, in my opinion, is have a policy, train your people on how to use it, what's appropriate, what's not.
Mm-hmm.
Same with shadow IT. We don't want unknown usage of our data being put into an LLM,
Mm-hmm.
or potentially using an AI tool that could be exploited.
Yeah, it all kind of comes back to culture. I know some organizations really struggle with adopting that culture of security and trying to get it to not sound like a bad word,
Mm-hmm.
but it can happen, and it's really awesome and empowering when you can get that positive culture. And I think a lot of it does come to, I mean, I've even talked about our organization with some of my clients and saying, if you can have an empowering culture throughout your whole organization, like not even just security, but security is one aspect of that. If you have an empowering culture where instead of people being punished for doing the wrong thing, they're encouraged for doing the right thing, they're
Right.
rewarded for reporting things. It's talked about as, we're all in this together. This is a team effort. Everyone here is effective at protecting our organization. Then instead of then your IT and security team don't even have to work as hard because everyone is on the IT security team and they're like, hey, this doesn't look right. Can you help me with this? Or hey, this looks suspicious. Or I thought about adding this thing, but now I know I should talk to my IT security people before making that change instead of just going ahead and doing it and being like, what? You mean that was a problem? I didn't know. And kind of just trying to
Yeah.
get away with whatever they can.
Yeah, I would say that is so important. I mean, we had an incident where one of our people got a malicious email from a known contact that had been
Hmm.
compromised, and they clicked the attachment because it wasn't unusual to get
Yeah.
something from this person, and when they clicked it, they realized, oh no, like this isn't right, and immediately contacted uh, IT or the help desk, and yeah, we were able to prevent anything from happening, but it can happen, and yeah, you want to build that culture of trust with your staff.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, going back to earlier too, some of it's just acknowledging that we're humans too. Like we're going to get tricked,
Yeah,
and the attackers are more and more sophisticated. They're now changing their behavior to be much more observe and then act, kind of trying to see what your normal behaviors are, what your normal communications are, so that they can slip in undetected. Because we have to get our jobs done. We can't scrutinize with to the utmost level every single email that comes through. We are not only just creatures of habit, but like we kind of have to be efficient at our jobs. But yeah, it's going to happen where just like that case, it looked normal until it didn't, and then you want your team to be effective and timely in
Yeah.
reporting that, because that's so important. You can usually prevent anything bad from happening if you act quick.
Yeah. All right, and the last one was about CISOs face personal jeopardy from corporate breach handling. So we're seeing that the SolarWinds being the biggest one, although I think most of those counts or charges got dismissed, which is good. But
Mm.
it's I mean, it's definitely something that is on the top of mind for a lot of people. And it was, I thought that, so I read through the linked article, and we'll just hit it really quickly, but it's like, what are they, what can you do? And it's clearly define roles and responsibilities. Okay. Yep. That makes sense, right? I need to know, what am I responsible for, and what power do I have to do that? Right. Cause we talk about security, and as a CISO, it's my job to provide risk and solutions, and the business decides on what the correct action is and then implement that action. Well, you need to have that defined, that who the decision maker is. It shouldn't be the CISO. It should be, the board or CEO, or, somebody higher up. So that's important. We talk about it all the time. Policies to meetings, document everything. Yeah.
Do that, especially if you're the one presenting what the risk is to your leadership team and having them deny it. You want that documented.
Yep. And so that's the next one, is establish a risk register. That is so critical. We've said it for years. Putting your head in the sand is no longer a defensible option. You have to be able to show, I know what my risks are. I've got a roadmap or mitigating controls, or it's been accepted by the organization. You have to know those things and have it documented.
Right. Yeah. I think that's one of the nice things about, and one of the essential reasons to do those regular risk assessments of some degree. I mean, one of the things that we give our clients is the roadmap or the action plan, kind of be like, here's the list of things that you didn't do. Not that you have to do all of them. Even just working with a couple team members this week, I know banks take that a little bit more seriously. They like to look at it as an audit and findings. It's like, no, these are just the things that you aren't doing. It doesn't mean you have to do all these things, but you are accepting risk if you don't. And it's not to say that that's always a bad thing either, because again, Evan said it before, and you guys have probably said it before. If you eliminated all risk, you wouldn't be in business anymore.
Right.
There is risk associated with business. There is risk with being alive. There is risk with just continuing to move forward. But so risk will always be there, but the more you can do to acknowledge those greater risks and make sure that they're communicated appropriately, documented, reviewed periodically, you're going to be more defensible in your program when something bad does happen. Because even if an attacker does take advantage of a known risk, if you've got good documented reasons for why that had to be open, then that's going to be considered defensible. Yep. It's only if your reasons are not responsible, like, oh, well, it was going to take 5 minutes out of my day to fix that. Yeah, it's not very defensible. You needed to do that.
How to make it work if I didn't do that? Not good.
Right. But yeah, it being too cumbersome and too expensive is considered a defensible reason.
Next, insurance and indemnification protection. So just making sure that you're covered by companies, what is it called? D&O, director and officer insurance. Get your own lawyer. Unfortunately, but yeah. And then the last one, I think.
Call out, should we become CISOs in the future?
The last one is be aware of what the company says publicly about security. Yes, because if they're claiming one thing and you're not doing it, guess what? That's not going to go well for you. Even if you can come back and say, that I never said that, I have documented, you still don't want to have to defend that.
Yeah. If you're having to chase your other executives and get them to backtrack on things that they've said, you might want to get out of that organization quickly. It's like, no, I need to be involved in these communications and these decisions, because if you're ultimately going to be held responsible, especially if they're saying, oh, our CISO is ultimately responsible for that.
Right.
Yeah, you better have some power there.
Yeah, you need to know what, especially like publicly filed held companies, they have what K series. I don't even know what all the different numbered things are, but then it's required for their public filings. They should be involved. If your company is doing that, you need to be involved. You need to make sure that they're not filling it out. Same with like bidding on contracts. We've seen that where salesperson filled out the form, and then when the security person heard about it and looked at it, they're like, "Whoa, no, this is bad. We are not doing any of these things." And that's just never a position you want to be in.
Yeah, I wonder. It makes me think of like working for one of my previous organizations, and we started to get some of those security questionnaires, and luckily they did come across my desk. I was titled IT director. I wasn't really a decision maker, but I just kind of ran my own department of one, which was me. But I was very grateful that those did come across my desk because they were filling these security questionnaires out, and it could have been the COO and the president that completed it on their own as a guessing game, but they did look for my feedback because they did want to be accurate. But I'll bet there are other organizations, especially small organizations, where they just kind of blow those off and are like, yeah, we're doing the thing. And maybe IT never even knows that that was completed and that inaccurate information was provided.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that is it for time today. Megan, I never am prepared for this, but you have a shout out?
I was actually thinking about it, though now I'm going to draw a blank. Oh no, I was going to shout out to the couple of people who already like cheered that I was joining the Unsecurity Podcast, because that was very encouraging to hear that people were excited to hear from me when I haven't even started yet. So yeah, thank you to those people. It means a lot to me.
Very cool. I'll give a shout out to our red and blue teams. I don't know all the finishes yet. We'll definitely have to have Eric and Pinky on and talk about that. And Oscar maybe come back and do a big round table, talk about how all those different CTFs went. But I got to compete with the blue team this year, and it was a ton of fun. We were, I would say, very respectable for the first time. The CTF we did, this was their first year doing that particular one. So very happy with that. But shout out to all those people that, it's just a lot of time and effort.
Yeah, they put a lot of energy into that, and I'm excited to hear more about it. Yeah, we should definitely have them on in a couple of episodes so that we can hear more. It sounded like they might have participated in more CTFs than they have in prior years. So
that was a big team. So
yeah. Yeah, they've grown a lot. So that's awesome.
All right. Well, that is it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.